threat. India hits back at Trump's. Narendra Modi. U.S. News it is time for the countries of the Asian continent to unite and form an Asian Union or some other organization. Asia has been divided only on the pretext of religion. It is very important to unite by removing this religious division, otherwise the Western world may put more pressure on Asia in the future. U.S. India relations hit. India's response to Trump's threat. India hits back at Trump's. Narendra Modi. U.S. News it is time for the countries of the Asian continent to unite and form an Asian Union or some other organization. Asia has been divided only on the pretext of religion. It is very important to unite by removing this religious division, otherwise the Western world may put more pressure on Asia in the future. U.S.-India relations hit new low despite Trump-Modi bromance. What's next? India won't give up on Russia, or its strategic autonomy, experts say, even as areas of friction with the U.S. grow. U.S. President Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi embraced during a joint news conference after bilateral talks at Hyderabad House in New Delhi, India, February 25, 2020. Adnan Abidi, Reuters. Save articles to read later and create your own reading list. New Delhi, India. When Donald Trump returned to the White House in January, many Indian analysts celebrated, arguing that his bonhomie with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi would shield the country from the chaos that the United States president could unleash. The two leaders had effectively campaigned for each other previously, attending joint rallies. They have repeatedly described each other as friends, and in February, Modi became among the first world leaders to visit Trump in the White House. But 6 months later, a sobering reality has hit New Delhi, with Trump punishing it with a 25% tariff on imports and near-daily threats to increase those levies further because of India's oil purchases from Russia, as he tries to force Moscow into accepting a ceasefire in its war on Ukraine. An India-U.S. trade deal remains elusive, and bilateral relations are on a slippery slope, according to some experts. U.S.-India relations are at the lowest point in decades. Biswajit Dar, a trade economist who has worked on several Indian trade deals, told Al Jazeera. Dozens of other countries, including neighbors India has tense ties with, such as Pakistan and Bangladesh, are facing lower tariffs. Addressing a public rally on Saturday, Modi took a defiant stance against Trump's tariff assaults. The world economy is going through many apprehensions. There is an atmosphere of instability, Modi said. Now, whatever we buy, there should be only one scale. We will buy those things which have been made by the sweat of an Indian, he added. Modi's comments come as Indian officials reportedly reject stopping the buying of Russian crude. Trump has blamed India's buying of Russian oil for helping finance Moscow's war on Ukraine. They, Indians, don't care how many people in Ukraine are being killed by the Russian war machine, Trump said Monday. Because of this, I will be substantially raising the tariff paid by India to the USA. So how did we get here? What are the growing points of discord between India and the US? And could India give up on Russian oil to save its relationship with the US? What are the friction points in US-India relations? Modi and Trump might speak highly of each other, but there is a growing number of areas where India and the US are at odds, ranging from trade agreements to strategic alignment. Trade has long been a sticking point in US-India relations, even as strategic and defense ties have deepened. The US has consistently pushed for greater market access, lower tariffs, and stronger protections, especially for its tech, pharmaceutical, and agricultural exports. India, on the other hand, has resisted what it sees as disproportionate pressure to open up its economy in ways that may harm its domestic industries and small farmers. Yet, before Trump, the two countries managed this economic relationship despite its imbalance. India sold twice as much to the US as the US sold to India. The US wanted access to India's growing markets, and India needed to export to the US, so keeping ties afloat was important to both. After Trump first announced tariffs on almost all trading partners on April 1st, Indian and US officials began talks to stitch together a trade deal. But disagreements over e-commerce regulation, digital data flows, and price controls on medical devices have reportedly stalled progress. Indian officials were frantically chasing the August 1st deadline set by Trump to avoid tariffs. But despite occasional breakthroughs, like India cutting tariffs on some US goods, the two countries have not yet concluded a full bilateral trade deal. With negotiations still underway, New Delhi now faces 25% tariffs on its exports to the U.S., and Trump has threatened unspecified additional penalties tied to India's energy and arms purchases from Russia. This is a pressure tactic by Trump, said Anil Trigunayat, a former Indian diplomat who has served as India's trade commissioner in New York. Unlike others, India has not given in to what the Americans want because we have to protect our MSMEs and agriculture, he added, using the acronym for micro, small, and medium enterprises. Almost half of India's population depends on agriculture for its livelihood, making the issue politically sensitive for every Indian government. Everybody is playing hardball on both sides, and it's necessary to arrive at a mutually beneficial solution, he told Al Jazeera. U.S. President Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi shake hands during a news conference in the East Room of the White House on February 13, 2025. In Washington, D.C., Alex Brandon, AP, India's close ties with Russia aids Trump's frustrations with Russia, mount over stalled peace talks to end the war in Ukraine. The U.S. president has been looking for more ways to corner Moscow. India's long-standing relationship with Russia has emerged as a key target for Washington. While the U.S. views India as a key partner in countering China's rise in the Asia-Pacific, it has grown increasingly uneasy with New Delhi's continued defense and energy ties with Moscow, analysts say. At a time when the West has shunned Russian President Vladimir Putin, who also faces an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court related to the war in Ukraine, Modi visited Russia twice last year. In July 2024, Putin conferred upon Modi the Order of St. Andrew the Apostle, the first called, Russia's highest civilian honor. Russia remains one of India's largest arms suppliers, and their cooperation spans critical technologies, including missile systems and nuclear reactors. And after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, India ramped up imports of discounted Russian crude oil. Kashmir ceasefire. After an attack by gunmen in Indian-administered Kashmir's Pahalgam resort town on April 22, in which 26 civilians were killed, India and Pakistan engaged in their most expansive military conflict in decades. As the South Asian nuclear-armed rivals traded missile and drone attacks in May, Trump said he intervened and told both countries to agree to a ceasefire, or there would be no trade. Fellas, come on, let's make a deal. Let's do some trading. Let's not trade nuclear missiles. Let's trade the things that you make so beautifully, Trump said a few days later in Riyadh. I used trade to a large extent to do the ceasefire. And it all stopped, he added. In India, which has long held the position that all disputes with Pakistan must be settled bilaterally with no third-party mediation, Trump's claim that he engineered the May 10th ceasefire that stopped the fighting has sparked criticism of Modi from the opposition. Modi's government has insisted that the truce was brought about bilaterally, that Modi did not speak to Trump during the conflict, and that, contrary to the U.S. president's claims, trade was never discussed as a factor in negotiating the ceasefire. But Trump has doubled down on his claim, mentioning more than 30 times that he brokered peace. Growing U.S.-Pakistan ties after the ceasefire between India and Pakistan in May, Trump hosted Pakistan's army chief, Asim Munir, at the White House. Never before had a U.S. president hosted a Pakistani military boss who was not also the head of state. That meeting underscored a growing warmth between Washington and Islamabad after years of tense ties, with U.S. military officials crediting Pakistan with helping them capture wanted terrorists. The government of Pakistan also officially endorsed Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize for recognition of his decisive diplomatic intervention and pivotal leadership during the recent India-Pakistan crisis. A day after meeting Munir, Trump called Modi a fantastic man, but added that Munir was extremely influential in bringing about the ceasefire. I love Pakistan, Trump said, and repeated, I stopped the war between Pakistan and India. As Trump targeted India in his latest tariff assault, he took to his Truth Social platform to reveal that he had concluded a deal with Pakistan, in which they would work together on developing oil reserves. Who knows, maybe they'll be selling oil to India someday, he wrote. Later, the U.S. imposed a 19% tariff on imports from Pakistan, which Islamabad hailed as balanced and forward-looking. Big tech hiring, deportation days before. Modi visited Trump in February. Visuals emerged of Indian citizens in the U.S., shackled in chains, parading towards a U.S. military aircraft, prompting anger in India over the treatment of its nationals. Returnees,